Hey guys, there's a Thor movie that came out and supposedly it's amazing. Now at the time of doing this, I haven't seen it, but one of my favorite Thor stories was written by Jason Aaron before the whole Mighty Thor swamp out. This is the story of Thor God Butcher. Our story begins in 893 just off the coast of Iceland, where a young Thor enjoys the finer pleasures of his life. A frost giant has been terrorizing the people for weeks, and Thor saw to it that his axe Jornbjorn would hack off his head right there. For the next 4 days, Thor had eaten more goats than the frost giant and drank enough mead to drown a dozen sailors, and he made love to more than half of the women in the village. Life was good for Thor, Odin's son, god of thunder, prince of Asgard. But on that fourth night, there was a scream. Everyone runs outside to see what it is. What was it? The young girl runs up stating that someone is in the water, a devil man, and one of the villagers pulls up a floating head from the water, tossing it to the ground, stating that he is not from their village. Thor looks at the dead man's eye and he says that he was a god. The villagers begin to panic and Thor tells them that whatever it was that killed this man, its skull will be no match for Asgardian steel. He picks up the head and the village elder asks Thor if he's ever seen anything like a butchered god before. Thor examines the head and he says that he's seen gods suffer and bleed. Immortal fathers subject their own sons to torments. But this, I have never seen anything like the horror in this god's eyes. The elder falls to her knees and she begins to chant, and Thor asks, "To what god are you praying?" And she tells him that she is praying to all of them. And the current day on the planet of Indigar, a young alien girl prays for rain on their dry lands, for without it, they shall die. Suddenly there's a strike of thunder as a hammer falls, and with it rain washes over the ground. Thor grabs Mjolnir and he says that he is Thor, warrior of Asgard, avenger of Earth, and he swears on all that is holy, no one will die today. The young girl runs over telling him that she never thought he would actually come, and Thor tells her that he heard her prayer. What kind of god would he be if he did not answer? As for his aid, the aliens offered Thor their best cave slime ale, and he told them stories of his travels and triumphs. As the young girl sleeps, the elder tells Thor that they owe him their lives, and Thor says that what they owe is this girl and her prayer. Why is it that they do not pray to their own gods? And the elder says that that is because Indigar has no gods. However, as a child, his mother would tell him stories of gods from long ago who lived in a jeweled city high in the clouds. Shocked to hear this, Thor takes the skies to find that jeweled city, and soon he does. He walks through the palace to find no one in sight and nothing disturbed. But there is one thing strange, a storage room with chains locking it tight. With one swing from Mjolnir, Thor breaks the chains, opening the door, and then he smells why no one has been in here. These gods are dead. Hogscar the Harsh, Crawlskin the Cruel, Lady Vile the Goddess of Atrocities, and the entire pantheon of fearsome immortals, all butchered like animals. While Thor looks around, outside those chains begin to melt and pull together, and Thor realizes what's going on, and he says, "Oh hell." He turns back to see a giant black beast lunging at him, and the beast attacks wildly like an animal. No skill, no fury. This is not the killer, this is his guard dog, and a very strong one at that. Thor is knocked into a stone wall, and as he gets back up, he thinks that there is only one person who could have done this. Gorr the God Butcher yet lives. And that can only mean one thing: more gods are sure to die. Many millennia from them, in the far-flung future, in the great hall of Asgard, King Thor sits upon his throne with no subjects to rule. He shouts for someone to bring him his arm, and then he remembers that he is so damn old, he keeps forgetting that there is no one left but him. He is Thor, Odin's son, king of a broken Asgard, last of all of the gods, and today, he will try yet again to see Valhalla. With sword and hammer in hand, Thor leaps out into battle against the Black Beast. Knowing whatever may happen, he will face it like a god. Back in the past, young Thor travels with the Vikings across the sea to see more of the gods who were slain and washed up on the shores. They sail for 3 days until they reach the banks of Neva River, and they find the Slavs. And Thor asks, where are the gods that they pray to? One shouts that their gods will be here soon enough, Norse swine. Pirun the Storm Lord and Chernabog the Black will come on their winged stallions. Soon everyone begins to hear the flapping of wings, and when they look up, they see Purun's steed bloodied and with no Purion. One of the Vikings says that it would appear the gods hadn't the nerve to face him, and Thor takes the steed flying into the skies, telling the Vikings to make sure that they save a cask of ale for him. He flies up and he begins to feel the droplets of blood raining down, god blood from the skies. Seconds later, Chernobog the Black rides by, now with his head cut off, dripping blood into the clouds. And behind him is Gore, the God Butcher, readying his black blade. Without even so much as a flash, the winged horse had its own head and legs cut right off, and Thor begins to plummet back to the earth. Gore shouts for him to feel the sense of helplessness. This is how it feels to be mortal. Next, you will learn how it feels to be butchered. As Thor falls, he grabs a hold of Chernobog's steed and he flies back yelling, "My name is Thor of Asgard, warrior born, and the last of the gods that you will ever see." Gore asks, "Asgardian? I've never killed one of you before, but fret not. Soon the entire Pantheon will join you." The two fight in the skies, exchanging blow after blow, and Gore's weapons are unlike anything that Thor has ever seen. They form and they whip about, all striking perfectly, and in one last attempt at victory, Thor slashes into Gore, but he responds by shooting out and knocking Thor off of his horse. Thor tries to fight him off, and Gore takes his black blade, thrusting it into Thor's stomach, and he asks, "What are you even the god of?" Gore begins to laugh as he brings Thor closer, and Thor tells him quietly, "The god of thunder." Suddenly there's a crack-hoom and the lightning strikes Gore off and the two begin to fall towards Earth. Back in the current time, the present day, the normal middle-aged Thor stands above the defeated beast, thinking that if the strengths of these creatures are a part of Gore, that he has grown considerably in the time since they last fought. Mjolnir then pulls Thor into the air and Thor shouts they must make haste to the omnipotent city, the gods of all-knowing. For the longer that they tarry, the gods will soon suffer. Upon reaching the city, the Lord Librarian takes Thor to the Hall of the Lost, the room filled with books and scrolls on gods who have been inactive. Thor looks at the giant rows of tomes and asks, isn't anyone alarmed by how many of them that there are? And the librarian tells him that gods come and go. Such is the way of things. With so many places to start, Thor picks one, the Oaken King and Sequania of the Garden Eternal. No one has seen them for 2,000 years, and when Thor arrives, he sees exactly why. These gods were nailed to their trees, and just like before, a black beast appears. World after world, planet after planet, all of them the same. The bodies of the gods butchered by a black beast keeping watch. As Thor gazes off the massive body of what was once Falagar the Behemoth, he swiftly kills the black beast. He then rips the head off and he screams to Gore to come and kill him. Come kill Thor if you so dare. Back in the past, young Thor wakes 7 days after his encounter with Gore. As he leans up, he asks, "Did I kill him?" And a Viking tells him that they are unsure. They just found him lying in the snow. Thor gets up telling the man to bring him meat, mead, and then his axe. Hours later, after regaining some of his strength, Thor sets out into the wilderness to look for Gore, but instead finds another god. The god calls out that he is, or was, Hinkon, Siberian god of the hunt. The Black Butcher told him to relay a message, and that was to come to his cave along the lake. Just follow the screams. Thor holds out his axe, telling him that there is no honor in the way that the God Butcher fights. Now be at peace, Hinkon, the hunt has ended. In the current times, with our present-day Thor along the shores of Lake Ladoga, Thor takes Iron Man with him to scan the area for the cave he once found so long ago. Tony tells him that he knows that he can call the Avengers, right? But Thor tells him no. And Tony says, that's right, God business. That's okay, we got plenty of mortal problems to deal with right now anyway. So Thor looks at the cave that he was once in 1,000 years ago, hoping to never see again. There have been plenty of things that he has forgotten over the years. The face of the first maiden that he kissed, the first troll that he felled, or even the first dragon that he tamed. But this cave is something that he will remember to the end of time. This is where the God Butcher taught him fear. As he steps in, he calls to Queen Freya that she needs to have every Asgardian called back home. Their gates locked behind them. Anyone of immortal blood is under threat. Freya asks what happened, under threat by whom, and then there's a snap of a twig. Thor grips his hammer and he charges forward at the being fleeing. He grabs a hold of him and the creature shouts, "Don't hurt him! I am not Gore!" And Thor demands to know why he is here. The creature tells him that he is hiding from him. After what happened, Gore would never set foot here. Everything that is happening now is all because of what happened here. It's all because of Thor, that the gods are dying right now. Thor stares at the creature asking, "Who are you?" And he says that his name is Sadruk. He is the type of god that you don't meet every day. One who looked upon the face of Gore and lived. He's not sure why he was kept alive, why he was made to witness as his whole pantheon was slaughtered by the Black Berserker. Every day he begged to be killed, to stop it all, but Gore just cut off his eyelids and said that he had no choice but to watch. Gore also said that he would never come to this cave, and that he was saving Thor for last. Thor asks where he can find the God Butcher, and Sadruk tells him that there is no need to look, he will appear soon enough. But perhaps Kronux. Thor then tells Sadruk to come with so together they may finally end this thing once and for all. And later at the Omnipotent City, Thor and Sadruk head to the Halls of All-Knowing to find more information on Kronux, when Thor finds Librarian beaten. Shadrax begins to panic, stating that he knew he shouldn't have come. If only he could close his eyes. And back in the past, the young Thor wakes to find himself bound and chained, hanging in front of Gorr. Gorr tells him that he is now awake and he will tell him where to find Asgard, so that he can watch how he kills everyone there. Thor shouts that you can wrap me in as many chains as you want, but I will never say. Gorr tells him, you know, I'm not exactly a novice in the ways of torture. I once tortured the god of torture. After an evening with him, he gave up where his children were hiding. Thor struggles to free himself and Gorr tells him, I have so rarely taken my time anymore. Hopefully, you can prove to be of some excitement. Back in the current times, in the present day, Thor begins to fight back the Berserkers when the librarian bashes one with the books. Thor shouts that these beasts are up to something, trying to hide something from Kronux. Who is the god called Kronux? And the librarian tells him that Kronux isn't a god, you imbecile. It's a world, a hidden one at that, and only the book can tell you where to find it. It's over there burning. Thor reaches down and he opens the scroll to read its contents, and soon it begins to burn to ash. And Thor tells him, it may have burned, but I read what I needed. I fly to Kronux, the palace of infinity. Meanwhile, on Kronux, the Berserkers slaughter all of the gods there, draining their blood into a large pool. Gorr looks at the last god and he asks, is this enough? And the time god tells him, it will have to be. There's none left. Gorr tells him, just keep in mind, if I don't return, the Berserkers will tear you apart. The god says that he can't promise that he wouldn't be killed once he gets to where he's going. You're going extremely far back. Do you even know what's waiting there? And Gorr says, I know more about gods and their history than you do, last god of Kronux. As Gorr begins to step into the pool, the god says that there will always be peaceful beings, caretakers of time. And Gorr tells him there are two kinds of gods, those who do harm and those who do nothing at all. And I had yet to decide which is more worthy of my wrath. Soon enough, though, you will all be dead. As Gorr is sinking into the pool, the worlds begin to change as he teleports back 14 billion years ago into the void. He looks upon the elder gods, seeing how he made awkward creations, all minutes old and already begging for death. Life will still find a way to thrive, though. However, they will not be worshipping this god, at least, for he is Gorr, son of the Nameless Father, and he still believes the dream of a godless age. Soon the blood begins to bubble, and Gorr reaches up, pulling himself out, and the god says, impossible. Gorr tells him, sorry to disappoint, but Gorr yet lives, and I have claimed my prize, the still warm heart of an elder god. Now all I need is a moon or two, some centuries to myself, and some space to build, to slave. I need so many slaves. But before he can leave, lightning strikes Gorr, and Thor shouts, it is time that you know the wrath of Thor. Back in the past, with the younger Thor, Gorr asks Thor, should he stop now? It's been 17 days and you've endured far longer than even the sturdiest of the immortals. Gorr stands up, telling him, come on, is there anyone in your family that you hate? A sibling, perhaps a parent? Just tell me. However, there comes a shout from outside, and the Vikings rush in, stating that they shall redden their spears. Rather than 1,000 deaths for one retreat, this night they will feast in Valhalla and die for Thor. Gorr tells the men that they need to stop this. He has come to liberate them from the yoke of the divine servitude. And the men don't listen and they continue to fight, so Gorr says, fine, you shall die for your god. See if he even takes notice. One by one, the men are killed and slaughtered, and Thor uses all of his strength to free himself. As Gorr grabs the last of the men, he asks, where are the gods now? Do you see the truth yet? Where is your savior, Thor? However, without a word, Thor grabs his axe and he swings it upward, cutting off Gorr's arm. In the current times, the present day, the Berserkers overwhelm Thor and they hold him down as Gorr tells him, I thought you were dead that day, but instead, they saved you. I've saved you from a life of failure, which is why I must repay my debt by letting you die last. Gorr looks at the last of the time gods and he asks if it's done. And the god says that he's programmed it just as he asked. One of Gorr's tendrils whip out and stab into the god's neck, and then the Berserkers hang him over to drain his blood into the pool. Gorr shouts that all the gods will die, from the first to the last. He must go now and build an army and explore the new horizons of Deicide. As Gorr sinks into the pool, he tells Thor to make sure that he stays alive for a very long time. I would be terribly disappointed if we do not meet again. And Thor shouts for him not to go, and he bursts out of the pile of berserkers. He shouts, the universe is not big enough to hide, and he rockets after Gorr into the pool. The world shifts and we see the broken ruins of Asgard, and Thor asks, where is the butcher of the gods? And a voice tells him, well, look at that. I wasn't expecting you. King Thor steps out and Thor asks, what happened to the Asgardian father. King Thor tells him, I am not your father, you beardless whelp. Now get ready with that hammer and show me you're all that I remember you to be. Together the two Thors fight and they destroy the berserkers, and as they go, King Thor notices that they are dissolving. Bless his eye, they're being pulled back. Thor asks, where is the God Butcher? He was just behind me. And King Thor says, right behind you? You're even dumber than I remember. He goes on explaining that he did appear at the same exact spot that he did, but he's late. The God Butcher has been here for 900 years, and he's been busy. Elsewhere, Gorr returns his berserkers into himself, stating that it would seem that we have another Thor. Splendid! We can never have too many of those. I once said that I would save him for last, and that day is imminent. And soon, the first day of a new age of freedom will begin. And there you have it, our first cliffhanger in our Jason Aaron Thor storyline. Now, we'll be back very soon with Thor God Bomb, in which Thor actually gets to use 2 hammers. Now, I hope you weren't too confused by young Thor, middle-aged Thor, and God future King Thor, but if you weren't, or you are, I apologize, and if you aren't confused, then stick around and subscribe to the channel to get the God Bomb storyline coming out very soon. Now click right over here for something recommended by YouTube. Over here, following my jazz hands, will get you more Thor-related content and Hulk-related content. And right around here with more jazz hands, that's going to be a subscription button. I would appreciate it if you'd help us out, and don't forget to follow me on Twitter, where you'll find single tweet reviews as I read new comics. Thank you, and have a good night.